Hi, I'm Michael Keane, and I make movies. But I also watch movies. Too many, as my stepfather might say. For May, I decided to take note of everything I watched for the whole month, and, well, here's that. First up, I watched Thunderbolts, and the latest Marvel flick was... fine. It was good. I'll call it good. Can't say I was enthralled by it, but the focus on mental health, it was a welcome change of pace, and I could see the platitudes that are served up being genuinely helpful for viewers who aren't used to these things being explored in popular media. In that way, it's successful in that it presents these pretty complicated, harsh ideas in a digestible way for a wide audience, and I appreciated that. That said, as a comic book movie, I was left kinda underwhelmed. I'm fond of Sentry as a character in the comics, but he's oversimplified here, and the coolest ideas involving him are undercut either by the script or by the edit. There's a sequence involving dream worlds, essentially, that could have sold me on the whole Enterprise if it just went a little longer and a little harder. Instead, it feels very breezed over, which is how most of the best ideas in the film wind up feeling. Still, it's a solid team-up, and I enjoyed getting something a little different from Marvel, so, Of course, there's only one pairing for a screening of an MCU slopfest, and that's little Jess Franco, baby. I'm working on a video about his prolific career, which will be out when the sun dies, and so I'll talk more about this when I get there. But point is, I watched Tinamos 18 años. I think is how, whatever. It's We Are 18 Years Old. That's the English title. This was Franco's first feature film as a director, and honestly, it's pretty good. Nothing extraordinary, but it's a colorful early look into what would become Franco's staggering filmography. It even features an extended creepy castle sequence, which was a welcome surprise. That said, don't go into this when expecting wall-to-wall Francoisms. This is a Spanish teen comedy through and through. For May the 4th, I offered up a few options to my weekly movie group, and we wound up picking the Roger Corman production Galaxy of Terror, a film that's more a knockoff of Alien and Forbidden Planet than anything else. Battle Beyond the Stars would have made more sense, but whatever. Point is, we watched the Alien ripoff where James Cameron famously worked as a production designer and used McDonald's food trays to add some ambiance to the spaceship interiors. You know the one. The whole thing is a bit of a mixed bag, as is to kind of be expected from a Corman sci-fi horror epic. I really enjoyed the production design, which isn't terribly surprising, as well as the direction from Bruce D. Clark. It's got a great central concept, basically what if a bunch of astronauts got caught in a fantastical and deadly mind trap. This allows the filmmakers to really go wild with the visuals and various nasty beasties, including an incredibly memorable giant worm, which appears in a sequence that honestly just feels like a fever dream, and is extremely not PC. Of course, with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning coming out in May, I had to rewatch the whole series. I'm a huge fan of the MI franchise, so I actually started my rewatch back in April, and on the 5th, I got around to Mission Impossible Fallout, aka the best goddamn one by a country mile. This viewing didn't really provide much more insight than previous ones, but I did notice more of the editing choices. Specifically, there are several instances where the identity of John Lark is pretty much foretold by shot choices made in the edit. I'll talk more about Fallout in just a bit, though. See, I followed up Fallout with Mission Impossible 3 because I'm difficult and started a rewatch with someone else in the middle of my rewatch. One thing I've noticed about the series is that Fallout really backhands the ever-loving shit out of the installments preceding it. None of the films are bad, even the much-maligned Part 2, but watching Fallout back-to-back with 3 really shines a light on the latter flick's issues. For example, the cinematography, while featuring some really badass shots, just can't compete, and even feels like a TV show in comparison to the grandeur of Fallout. I love Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain, and when the action hits, it really hits. I mean, just look at Tom Cruise getting wrecked by a drone. It's next level when it really tries, but that's undermined a bit by that TV feel that J.J. Abrams brings to the table. No serious shade against this one, it's still a riveting action picture, but I think I'd have preferred the David Fincher version that we never got.
He's a man who provides.
Of course, I had to continue my initial Mission Impossible journey, so next thing I watched was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. And surprise, you're getting a lot of opinions about this franchise in this video. On this viewing of Dead Reckoning, I basically just doubled down on my previous opinion, which is that it fucking rules. I see a lot of distaste towards this installment, which is wild to me because I think it gives fans a lot of what they would want from the series. Granted, Dead Reckoning is a little light on the spy thriller element, but as far as action and fun character beats, it delivers in spades. Then I watched Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I still think this one is a bit overrated, but goddamn if that Burj Khalifa sequence isn't the bee's knees. I think the big issue with Ghost Protocol is that it can't ever quite reach those heights again, even with a cool Indian parking garage and a white-knuckle nuclear threat. It's funny and entertaining, but for me it ranks as a lower tier part of the series. Next in my Jess Franco watch-through came Labios Rojos, or Red Lips. This is his 1960 crime comedy about a pair of hot lady detectives who solve crimes under the guise of a singular detective known only as Red Lips, much to the chagrin of this exhausted police inspector. Not much to say here. It's a crime comedy, alright, with a few hints of Franco's later career, but nothing incredible. It's not even the best Red Lips movie. But then came Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. I love this wacky-ass movie. For some reason, I never finished the last drive-in episode of this one, but in this instance, I watched it sans the Joe Bob commentary with my little weekly movie group. The story involves a very handsy aunt played by the one and only Susan Tyrrell, who's obsessed with keeping her orphaned nephew all to herself. Joining the ride is Bo Svensson as an incredibly homophobic police detective who really comes close to stealing the show. He's the epitome of, God, I can't wait to see this character die, and if it weren't for Susan Tyrrell being absolutely batshit insane, he'd be the star attraction. Cannot recommend this one strongly enough. If you have not watched Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, watch Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. Also, it has an insane opening car crash. Just bananas. Just go, I'm not going to say anything else about it. Just go watch the movie.
And that's where you come in.
I followed that up with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which suffice it to say is still an incredible entry in the franchise, let down only by virtue of not being Mission Impossible Fallout. I love the car-turned-motorcycle chase, which follows the also pretty dope underwater vault sequence. Solomon Lane is a solid villain, Ilsa Faust is a welcome addition to the main cast, and overall I just have no real qualms with Rogue Nation. It's a fast-paced, fun little spy action flick. Next up, 5 Dead on the Crimson Canvas. This was a shot on 8mm Neo-Giallo from 1995, featuring the one and only Joe Zazzo as Bill, a man determined to uncover the truth behind his artist brother's disappearance. Meanwhile, a mysterious black-clad killer goes after those who have bought the brothers' paintings, murdering them in a properly gory fashion. This is a weird little picture, oftentimes more inept than it's meant to be, while also adopting many of the inherent flaws of low-budget Jolly for the sake of paying homage.
Full of peaks, valleys, and goldfish, cat!
It's a methodology I can certainly appreciate, but it doesn't always work, often resulting in a slow narrative that, while perhaps intentional, is still pretty boring to behold. However, the filmmakers do manage to include plenty of inspired set pieces and shots in between, well, plenty of ineptitude, resulting in a mishmash of entertaining sleaze brought down a few pegs by amateurish mistakes and some serious pacing issues.
I think I have played Good Samaritan for long enough.
Now, I've been trying to get back into reading through Stephen King's bibliography, and my first step in that journey was Kujo. I had put off seeing the movie for years due to not having read the book, and so now that that's come and gone, I watched the film. And boy howdy, what a picture! I was surprised by just how faithful the movie was to the book. I thought for sure more of the advertising subplot would have been cut in favor of doggy violence, but up until that gruesomeness starts happening, it's actually a pretty major part of the plot. My only real criticism with Kujo as an adaptation is that I feel like it abandons those subplots once the killings start, and then never really concerns itself with them again, ending in a sudden fashion that left me wanting just a little bit more. A simple epilogue would have been nice. As for the big third act change, I don't have a problem with it. Apparently King himself wanted the ending changed, and I can understand why. It's a real downer in the book, and while I think it makes sense within the context of the story, it's not wholly necessary.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
Then came the big day. I got to see an early screening of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and man, I was pumped. I was so freaking excited for this movie. Unlike a lot of Mission fanatics, I actually love Dead Reckoning, as I already said, and so to see the follow-up in glorious IMAX like a week early was seemingly a dream come true. If you want my expanded thoughts on it, you can check out my Screen Rant video entitled I Watched Every Mission Impossible movie, in which well, you get the idea. For now, let's just say that I was disappointed in the final product. I did wind up seeing it again when it finally officially came out, so I'll dig a bit deeper in just a bit. In the meantime, there are a lot of movies that I really should have seen by now, but I keep putting them off. And amongst them is the collected works of Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. So I decided to finally knock their movies off my watch list, starting with 2012's Resolution. Basically, all of their films exist within a shared universe, although beyond that I have always managed to stay unspoiled. Resolution was their first film together, and you can definitely tell their resources were limited. This is a very Spartan production, taking place almost entirely in and around a beat-up old cabin in the middle of nowhere. The plot follows a guy who wants to help rehabilitate his drug-addled friend, and to do so, he handcuffs him inside the cabin. Things get weird, however, and our dude winds up having to contend with drug dealers, Native American landowners, and a developing mystery surrounding strange recordings that get more and more personal and creepy as time goes on. It all leads to a conclusion that I personally found satisfying, but I can see others feeling differently toward it. It's definitely one of those, wait, that's fucking it? Kind of finales. My understanding is that watching the next film, The Endless, will help shine a light on some of the happenings in Resolution, so we shall see how that works out when I watch it in June. For my 15th movie of the month, I went and I saw Final Destination Bloodlines, and what can I say? It was pretty good. I do think it has a problem maintaining some of the momentum provided by its opening sequence, which is definitely up there for this franchise. Luckily, it has Richard Harmon in its cast. He and Owen Patrick Joyner basically carry the whole movie on their shoulders for large chunks of the runtime. Not that Caitlin Santawana doesn't do a great job as the lead, she does, but Harmon and Joyner steal every scene they're in. I haven't watched any of the other Final Destination movies in years, and I think I can safely say Part 5 still ranks as my favorite, but Bloodlines is certainly in the upper ranks of a series that's been pretty consistent, if you just ignore the fourth installment. That one's a piece of shit. Of course, I still had my secondary Mission Impossible rewatch to get through, so next up on the docket was Fallout. Once again, this time I really tried to zero in on any flaws I could take away from it, and what I came away with was less concern about the Halo jump sequences, CGI storm clouds. They are distracting, as is the composited in ground beneath them, but what really makes me question the scene is the logic behind it. It's kind of a staple of the series to have very little reasoning for the big stunts. For example, in Rogue Nation, the whole jumping off point for the big underwater vault scene is so the team can replace a data card, allowing for Benji to get through security. And that's all well and good, but in Fallout, the reason for the Halo jump is just to get Ethan and Walker into a Paris nightclub under a fairly strict timetable. It makes sense on the surface, but the more you think about it, the more it breaks down. Surely there had to be a simpler way, and surely they would have had some warning about the weather conditions. Beyond that, there's also the usual instances of, well, how'd they get that? With the RFID wristband detector. What insane stunt had to be implemented off-screen just to get that data? I've now said data two different times, two different ways. Tomato. Anyway, Fallout still rules in spite of some questionable logic, and at least two instances where Ethan Hunt really should have died. I guess I could nitpick the final product all day long, but the point is that none of it really matters because, holy shit, what a cool movie.
Hey, kid! It's like potato chips. Once you eat one, you can't stop. Same goes for this broad.
Next up, The Bloody Ape, a shot on 8mm film about various stereotypes contending with a killer ape in what we'll call a liberal interpretation of Edgar Allan Poe's Murders in the Rue Morgue. This is another joint featuring Joe Zazzo, also featuring a number of other folks who would also go on to be in Five Dead on the Crimson Canvas. The low-budget gory havoc wrought by the titular ape is bound to be a high point for many, but I'm over here enjoying this outrageously racist detective, and outrageously racist mechanic, and outrageously racist video store owner.
What the hell are these doing in that adult room at this hour?
The humor in this thing is, it's kind of all over the place. Gags have a habit of going on either a little too long or a little too short, but luckily the default setting on this sucker is amusing. The race politics stuff is heavy-handed to say the very least, but there's something charming about how the filmmakers hammer down those ideas without any tact or decorum. Overall, I can't say it'll be for everyone, but I recommend the Bloody Ape. It's a lot of fun. Following that indie miracle, I went on to another little independent feature you might not have heard of, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning.
Oh, man.
Yep, finally coming around to the end of my second rewatch, and once again I loved Dead Reckoning, despite some issues. One of those is of course Gabriel and his bullshit. The airport sequence is really laughable when you consider both the security and the size of the Abu Dhabi International Airport. It's one of the biggest airports in the world, for one thing, making the idea of canvassing it so fast inherently ridiculous. But more importantly, where's security? It's a fucking airport, and peeps just be running around, entering restricted areas, tearing through luggage. It's bananas. Anyway, I still like it. I know that's an unpopular opinion amidst the Mission Impossible fandom, but there it is. It's great. Then I watched another early Jess Franco picture, La Reina del Tabarin, aka The Queen of the Tabarin, or Tabarin, or however the fuck you say it. It's a musical set in 1913 about a lower-class singer entering into a romance with a rich playboy. There's not much to say about it. It was a gun-for-hire job for Franco, and one with which he did what he was paid to do. It's a pretty film to look at, but there's not much more to it than that. Yeah. I followed that up with Vampireus 1930, Uncle Jess's fourth film and the last before he entered the horror genre with The Awful Dr. Orloff. Vampireus is another musical comedy featuring a smattering of actors from Queen of the Tabarin, as well as We Are 18 Years Old's comedy relief Antonio Ozores. This one is interesting. I thought I was in for something as uninspiring as Tabarin, but instead I got half Singing in the Rain riff and half What the Fuck Blackface Jamboree. This thing takes a hell of a turn about halfway through, right when it was starting to wear out its welcome. It's still not particularly good. It's a film that, like his freshman effort, I at least recommend fans check out for themselves, given you can find a copy. And you're not going to believe this, but I followed up Franco with more Mission Impossible. That's right, I still had one more to go on my other rewatch, so I journeyed to the IMAX at Town Square in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, and sat down for another 2 hours and 45 minutes of endless exposition, married to some of the most insane stunts ever contributed to cinema. How was it the second time? Well, believe it or not, it was actually a bit better. Not to the point where I loved it, sadly, but I certainly appreciated it more. The humor stood out this time as at least being present, if not quite as hard-hitting as I would have liked, and I can't deny that there is a lot of tension throughout. Still, it's a little too self-serious for a film chock full of borderline brain-dead moments, like Ethan jumping into the ocean, or the last few minutes of the submarine sequence. It's just hard to divorce these iffy decisions from the literal heights that Final Reckoning reaches elsewhere in its bloated runtime. As I've already said, it's a good film, but still a disappointment.
It's a life on the edge, you could say.
I had meant to watch the 2016 documentary Verhoeven vs. Verhoeven, but wound up with this, which isn't bad, just not quite as encompassing as that doc. This is a handy little primer for Verhoeven's career up to the production of Showgirls. I don't know, man, it was neat. Moving on. After that, I went on a bit of a stoner detour, starting with the 1997 camp classic Face Off. If you've never seen John Woo's American masterpiece, then it's time for you to get off your ass and sit right back down, I guess, and watch the damn thing. It's off-the-wall bonkers throughout and features two hams at their absolute hammiest. I think Nick Cage wins the film as most off-the-wall, predominantly thanks to the wealth of memes that he produced in this movie alone, but props must be given to Travolta, who has the unenviable task of replicating Cage's personality for a majority of the film. Then I rewatched Jack Reacher, starring Tom Cruise as walking giant Jack Reacher. All jokes about Cruise's height aside, this is still a riveting and entertaining action thriller. There's a spectacular car chase that heralds director Christopher McQuarrie's future takeover of the Mission Impossible franchise, and it's genuinely fun to just watch Cruise swagger around, quipping one-liners and beating the shit out of dudes. I followed that up with Pineapple Express. I liked it better than when I saw it in theaters, but it helps that I was also properly inebriated this time around. Fun fact, this is a great movie to watch while you're high and trying to put together a puzzle. And really, isn't that what life is all about? Side note, are we supposed to like Seth Rogen's character? Dude's a straight-up predator. If anything, he makes James Franco even more likable, which feels like it should be a crime, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
No problem.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me, you know?
Getting back down to business, I watched Business is Business, Paul Verhoeven's freshman feature film from 1971, which was also known as The Happy Hookers from Amsterdam, and boy howdy, that alternate title sure does deliver. These are some truly happy hookers. And when they get unhappy, well, they kick out that John covered in chicken feathers or use a fish to beat up an abusive boyfriend. They're imaginative, these Dutch broads. Then it was back on the Uncle Jess train with The Awful Dr. Orloff, aka the movie that finally brought Jess Franco into the horror genre.
Merci. Tu es bien gentil.
This is technically more of a detective story married to a gothic thriller, but whatever. It's a ghoulish ripoff of Eyes Without a Face, and that places it squarely in the horror genre in my book. Once again, we'll talk about this more when I inevitably get to my Jess Franco video.
Continue les recherches nuit et jour, et si je fais fiasco, je présenterai ma démission.
I continued my journey through the Paul Verhoeven oeuvre with 1973's Turkish Delight, a film in which Rutger Hauer basically plays a sculptor who moonlights as the living, breathing embodiment of chaos. This is the kind of movie that you watch with your jaw perpetually on the floor, as it covers seemingly every conceivable taboo that you wouldn't have expected to be broken by some Dutch guy in the early 70s. And yet here we are. Things do get pretty depressing, so don't go in thinking it's all fun and games, but this tale of one wild man's love for one wacky broad is nonetheless packed to the gills with delightfully provocative material. And big props to Monique van de Ven, who's a magnetic screen presence and who sadly only appeared in 2 of Verhoeven's films. I followed up that borderline masterpiece with Dix the Musical, and it's not great. I seem to be in the minority on this one. I just feel like it tries so very hard to be outrageous that it mostly falls flat and spends far too much of its painfully long 86-minute runtime on those sewer boys. Ugh, the sewer boys. Anyway, then I watched Verhoeven's Katie Tipple. I'm not going to try to say the Dutch title. A period drama that I put off for the longest time because I thought it might be kind of boring, and boy howdy, was I wrong about that. Which, you know, shame on me for ever doubting Verhoeven's ability to make things interesting. This is basically just the story of a woman dealing with men being dicks in the 19th century, and that might seem like a pretty maudlin affair, but Verhoeven fills the damn thing with an energy that's uniquely his own. It's also just a dirty little picture, both in the sexual sense and in more excremental capacities. My only real problem with this picture is that it ends very abruptly, which was apparently due to producer interference. I'll delve deeper in my inevitable Verhoeven retrospective, so keep an eye out for that. Now, following that up should have been tough, but I managed to pick just the right slice of schlock from the legends at PM Entertainment, 1996's action-packed The Sweeper, starring C. Thomas Howell as the most unlikable protagonist you could imagine. He's joined by a barely utilized Jeff Fahey, and definitely not the villain, but totally the villain, Ed Lauder. This thing is a beast, featuring not 1, not 2, but 3 massive bonkers car chases and a freaking mid-air fight scene that had me flashing back to Final Reckoning. The whole thing is a brilliant testament to what made PM Entertainment stand out, even if the final product is dumb as a rock. I definitely recommend checking this one out as soon as you can. It zips by, never stopping for more than a few minutes between action set pieces.
Gentleman's a fucking asshole if you ask me.
Finally, I finished up May with Paul Verhoeven's big war drama, Soldier of Orange, in which Rutger Hauer stumblefucks his way through World War II. The film takes place both in Holland and England, making this Verhoeven's step up from big-budget period piece to multinational big-budget war film period piece. It can feel like a bit of a shaggy dog at times, but I can't deny that the man knows how to pace a picture. For the most part, this thing zooms by despite a nearly 3-hour runtime. The story follows a group of college friends who get caught up in the Dutch resistance, among them a guy named Gus, played by Jeroen Krabbe? Jeroen? His name, this is how you spell his name. However the fuck you say that. No idea. No idea. I have no idea. But this guy, whom you might remember as the primary antagonist in The Living Daylights. The whole cast is strong, with Krabbe and Hauer standing out alongside Wiebe Roymans? Hebe Roymans? as Jan, or Jean, I don't fucking, whatever, a Jewish boxer who's imprisoned by the Nazis. Again, apologies for the pronunciation. Dutch is not my strong suit. I'll work on it. And yeah, that's everything I watched in May. What did I learn? Well, I found out that the early filmographies of two of my favorite directors are surprisingly strong, with Franco surviving a few gun-for-hire missteps, while Verhoeven just came out the gate running and seemingly never slowed down. I also reaffirmed my love for the Mission Impossible franchise and action cinema in general, with The Sweeper being a favorite of the month. Through all of this, I also gained more appreciation for strong pacing, because boy howdy, some of these suckers were mighty slow, while still others were paced so well that they easily overcame long runtimes and shoddy production values. It was a smorgasbord of cinema, and if there's a strong enough response to this video, I look forward to doing it again. Anyway, that's enough of me yammering. That's more than enough of me yammering. I've been yammering for a while now. Go watch a movie.
It's gonna take me some time to give you all that is mine. I'm looking ultra fine from your